My father betrayed my trust. Then the FBI knocked on his door. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. It started on a Tuesday night. I was at my dad's office, cleaning up the mess of receipts and paperwork he always left scattered after business meetings. He'd asked me to grab a file for him, said it was in the bottom drawer of his locked cabinet. I'd been given the key 100 times before, but that night, the wrong folder slid into my hand. It was thick, stuffed with papers that didn't belong in a tax folder. Bank statements from accounts I'd never seen. Some were in different names I didn't recognize, but all linked to my father's email. There were wire transfers to countries I couldn't even place on a map. At the back was a single photo, my father shaking hands with a man I had seen before on the news during a story about a federal investigation. My stomach dropped. For a moment, I told myself there had to be an explanation. Dad always said people were jealous of his success, that competitors spread rumors. But why were there fake IDs tucked between the pages? Why was there a prepaid phone, still in the packaging, under the pile of papers? I heard the garage door open. My hands moved on instinct, shoving the folder back exactly how I found it, locking the cabinet, and pocketing the prepaid phone before I could think twice. That night, I barely slept. My mind kept replaying the things I'd ignored. His sudden trips, the networking dinners that ended at 2 a.m., the times he'd snapped at me for asking too many questions. 3 days later, I got my answer. It was just after dinner. My mom was in the kitchen, washing dishes, when a pounding rattled the front door. Not knocking, pounding. I opened it and froze. 4 agents in dark jackets with bold yellow letters, FBI. One of them glanced past me. "We need to speak to Robert Miller. Now." I turned toward the living room, just in time to see my dad bolt for the back door. For a second, my body refused to move. It was like my brain couldn't process the image. My father, the man who taught me how to ride a bike, running from federal agents like a scene out of a crime drama. "Robert Miller." One of the agents barked, charging forward. The others fanned out, one heading straight through the kitchen where my mother dropped a plate, the shatter echoing like gunfire. I followed instinct, cutting through the hallway toward the back porch. Dad was already halfway across the yard, vaulting the fence like a man half his age. I wanted to shout his name, to demand an explanation, but my throat locked. An agent grabbed my arm, not rough, but firm enough to stop me. "Where's he going?" His eyes burned into mine like he was trying to read my thoughts. My voice cracked. "I don't know." And technically, I didn't. But deep down, I realized something awful. He did have somewhere to go. In the chaos, one agent stayed back with me and my mother while the others chased him. Mom's face was pale, her hands trembling as she gripped the counter. "This is a mistake," she kept repeating, but her voice didn't sound convinced. The agent's questions came rapid fire. Did we know about his business associates? Where had he been last night? Did he keep weapons in the house? My mother deflected, but I could feel his gaze linger on me, like he knew I was holding back. And I was. The prepaid phone in my pocket felt like it weighed 100 pounds. I kept thinking about that folder, about the handshake in the photograph, about every time Dad told me never to go through his things. Then the agent's radio crackled. A voice on the other end. "We've got eyes. Moving in." I didn't realize I was holding my breath until, seconds later, the sound of distant shouting and a single, deafening gunshot cut through the night. The sound hung in the air like the world had stopped breathing. My mother's hands flew to her mouth, a muffled sob escaping. I just stood there, frozen, my ears ringing. The agent with us pressed his earpiece closer. "Repeat. Was that a discharge? Status?" His voice was clipped, urgent. "Static. Then, suspect down. Not fatal. Secured." I didn't know whether to feel relief or panic. The words "not fatal" meant he was alive, but secured meant the moment I'd been dreading my whole life had arrived. My father was in custody. Minutes later, they brought him back through the yard. His hands were cuffed behind his back, dirt smudging his shirt, a shallow graze of blood on his temple. He still looked smug. That same confident half-smile he used at dinner parties. Like this was all some misunderstanding he could charm his way out of. When his eyes met mine, I felt my stomach twist. There was no apology, no fear, just calculation. Like he was already working out how to spin this. "You don't know what you've done," he said as they pushed him past me toward the waiting SUV. The agents didn't let me follow, but one of them slipped a card into my palm. Call if you remember anything. Anything at all. After they were gone, the silence in the house was deafening. Mom collapsed into a chair, staring at nothing. I went upstairs to my room, but I couldn't sit still. The prepaid phone burned against my leg, and the urge to look through it was unbearable. I locked my door, sat on the bed, and powered it on. No password. The screen lit up with message after message. Numbers I didn't recognize, coded phrases, wire transfer confirmations. And then, one thread with a single, chilling sentence. If your kid talks, we both burn. I stared at the message until the words blurred. If your kid talks. My chest tightened. They weren't just talking about my father, they were talking about me. Whoever sent this thought I was involved. My first instinct was to delete it, but my fingers froze over the screen. If I erased it, it was gone forever, and it might be the only thing protecting me. Or destroying me. I scrolled up in the conversation. Dozens of texts, some recent, some months old. My father had been careful. No names, just initials, account numbers, and cryptic instructions. But buried between all the coded exchanges, there were flashes of something personal. Mentions of the kid, or family leverage. And then, one that made my blood run cold. She still trusts me. Won't suspect a thing until it's too late. I didn't know if it was about me or Mom, but it didn't matter. The man I defended to teachers, to friends, to myself, the man who taught me how to ride a bike and pretended to care about my dreams, had been planning something behind my back. A knock at my door made me jump so hard I dropped the phone. Mom's voice was shaky. They want to come back tomorrow to ask you some questions. Questions. About him. About me. About this. I shoved the phone under my pillow and opened the door. She looked smaller than I'd ever seen her, her eyes red and hollow. Do you think Dad will be okay? She whispered. I didn't answer. That night, I couldn't sleep. Every sound outside made me sit up. Every car light flashing through my blinds made me think they were coming back. Around 2 a.m., the phone buzzed again. New message, same unknown number. Don't talk to the feds, or you'll regret it. I barely slept, but morning still came. The house felt wrong, too quiet, too heavy. Mom was already in the kitchen, stirring coffee she wasn't drinking. She didn't look at me when I sat down. Dad wasn't there. No note. No text. His absence pressed against the walls like a living thing. I poured cereal, but the crunching in my mouth felt deafening. My phone sat face down beside me. The threat from last night burned into my mind. Every time it buzzed, my stomach knotted. I didn't know if it was the same unknown number, the FBI, or him. Finally, Mom broke the silence. They'll be here at 10. My spoon froze midair. Who? The agents. They want to hear your side. She said it flat, like we were discussing the weather. But her hands trembled as she set her mug down. I wanted to tell her about the texts, about the number, about the threats. But something inside me twisted. If I told her, she might tell him. And if she told him, whoever was watching me would know. I decided to keep it to myself. For now. At 9:55, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. 2 agents stepped out, same ones as before. I could feel their eyes tracking every movement as they walked in. One of them, a woman with a hard, assessing stare, sat across from me at the kitchen table. We're not here to scare you, she began. But we believe you might have information that could help us. My pulse pounded in my ears. If I opened my mouth, I could blow up everything. Dad's life, my life. If I stayed silent, I'd be protecting him, and maybe protecting myself from whoever sent those messages. The male agent leaned forward. When's the last time you saw your father? Before I could answer, a sound came from outside. A car door slamming, heavy footsteps on the porch. Then a knock. The knock was sharp, urgent, 3 hard raps that made everyone in the room freeze. The agents exchanged a glance. The female agent's hand drifted toward her jacket, and I realized she was armed. My mom's eyes went wide, her lips parting like she was about to speak, but couldn't. The male agent stood first, motioning for us to stay put. He moved toward the door with the kind of deliberate slowness you only see in movies. I could hear my heartbeat in my ears. He opened it just a crack. Morning, a man's voice said. Deep, confident. The agent didn't respond right away. And you are? I'm looking for my son. It was Dad. My whole body went cold. The female agent stood now, positioning herself between me and the door. Dad leaned slightly, trying to peek past the male agent. I just want to talk to him, he said, voice coated in calm, almost rehearsed charm. The male agent's tone turned firm. Sir, you're not supposed to be here. Dad smiled. That same easy smile he used at barbecues, PDA meetings, anytime he needed people to trust him. I'm still his father. That hasn't changed. The female agent stepped forward. What has changed is your legal situation. You need to leave. His jaw tightened. If you're trying to turn my own son against me, you're making a mistake. The agents didn't flinch. The tension in the room was suffocating. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles whitened. Finally, Dad's eyes locked on mine, just over the agent's shoulder. And then, he mouthed something. One word. Run. That single word, run, hit me harder than anything he'd ever said. It wasn't a plea for forgiveness. It wasn't a declaration of love. It was a command. And coming from my father, it carried the same unshakable authority it always had when I was a kid. The male agent stepped outside, blocking my view, but I could still hear their muffled voices. Dad's tone dropped low and urgent, the kind of voice he used when negotiating something he couldn't afford to lose. The female agent turned to me. Has he tried to contact you before today? I hesitated, my eyes darting to my mom. She looked pale, shaking her head slightly like she didn't want me to answer. That only made my stomach twist tighter. Yes, I blurted. Last night. He called. Her eyes sharpened. What did he say? I swallowed. That I don't understand the whole story, and that I should be careful who I trust. The agent's gaze didn't waver. Did he ask you for anything? Money? Documents? Before I could answer, the voices outside got louder. I could hear my father's tone turning sharp, defensive. The male agent's voice was calm, measured, but something in his words made Dad snap. You don't know what you're dealing with. The next second, the door burst open and both men stepped inside. Dad's eyes were wild now, darting between me and the agents. Son, he said, voice low but shaking. There are things you cannot tell them. Sir, that's enough. The male agent cut in, stepping between us. And then Dad said something that froze my blood. They're not here to protect you. The room seemed to shrink the moment those words left his mouth. They're not here to protect you. The female agent's head tilted slightly, like she'd just heard a chess opponent reveal their next move too soon. Mr. Collins, she said evenly, you need to stop talking. But I couldn't stop staring at him. My father's eyes, those same eyes that had once taught me to throw a baseball in parallel park, were sharp, urgent, almost pleading. What do you mean? I asked, my voice coming out smaller than I wanted. Everything they think they know, Dad said, is based on lies. And if you tell them everything, you'll be next. The male agent stepped closer, his hand subtly resting near his hip. Mr. Collins, you're under arrest. Anything you say. Yeah, I know the speech, Dad snapped, never taking his eyes off me. But you, he jabbed a finger toward me. You need to listen to me for once in your life. Dad, think about who's been watching you, he cut in. Who called you last week? Who was parked outside your work? My stomach lurched. I had noticed a black SUV near my office 2 days ago. I'd written it off as paranoia, but now. Stop, the agent ordered. Dad's face softened for half a second. Kid, whatever you've found, don't give it to them. Before I could answer, the male agent pulled out handcuffs. Dad didn't resist, but he kept his gaze locked on me, his voice low but clear. Trust the wrong person, and you'll end up just like me. The front door slammed shut behind them, leaving the house eerily silent except for the distant hum of the refrigerator. My father's words echoed in my head like a bad song I couldn't turn off. Don't give it to them. I moved to the window and watched as the black SUV rolled down the street, my dad in the back seat between two agents. A small part of me wanted to believe this was some huge misunderstanding. But another part, the part that remembered the hidden folder, the burner phone, the strange late-night calls, knew better. When I turned back toward the living room, that's when I saw it. An envelope. It was lying just beneath the coffee table, like it had been kicked there during the chaos. My heart thumped as I crouched down and pulled it out. On the front, my name was written in my father's unmistakable blocky handwriting. Hands trembling, I tore it open. Inside was a single flash drive and a scrap of paper with 2 words, for insurance. I stared at it, a million questions racing through my mind. Insurance for what? Against who? The temptation to plug it into my laptop was overwhelming. But his warning, trust the wrong person and you'll end up just like me, wrapped around me like barbed wire. I slid the drive into my pocket, the weight of it suddenly enormous. My phone buzzed in my hand, an unknown number calling. When I answered, a low, unfamiliar voice said, "If you have what we think you have, you're already in danger." My grip tightened on the phone. "Who is this?" I demanded, but the voice ignored my question. "You need to listen carefully," they said, calm, but with an undercurrent of urgency. "If the FBI knows about that drive, they'll take it. And if he knows you still have it, you won't be safe." My chest tightened. "He? You mean my father?" The caller hesitated. "He's not the only one involved. You're in the middle of something much bigger than you realize. Keep it hidden. Don't talk to anyone, not even your friends." I swallowed hard, glancing at the envelope still in my hand. "What's on it?" "You'll find out when the time is right," the voice replied. "But understand this. There are people who will do anything to keep that information buried. People who don't care if you're his kid or not." The line went dead before I could ask more. I sat frozen, the silence of the room suddenly oppressive. Through the window, I spotted a dark sedan idling at the corner. No plates on the front. My skin prickled. I moved quickly, slipping the flash drive into the lining of my winter coat. Just as I zipped it shut, there was a knock at the door, 3 slow, deliberate raps that made my stomach twist. I froze mid-step, my pulse hammering in my ears. 3 slow knocks. Not the frantic pounding of a neighbor, not the friendly tap of a friend. It was measured, intentional. I crept to the peephole. 2 men in dark suits stood on the porch, their expressions unreadable, hands clasped in front of them. Their black sedans were parked just far enough away to blend into the night, but I could see them. More than one. I didn't open the door. "Who is it?" My voice cracked despite my effort to sound calm. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." One of them called back, flashing a badge toward the peephole. "We have a few questions." Every instinct screamed, "Don't open it." My father's voice echoed in my head. His lessons about controlling the narrative, how he could talk his way out of anything. Only now, I realized those weren't lessons about business. They were lessons in evasion. "What's this about?" I asked, my grip tightening on the edge of the door. The taller agent stepped forward. "Your father is under investigation for multiple federal offenses. We have reason to believe you may have information critical to our case." My gaze flicked to the coat rack where my winter jacket hung, the flash drive hidden inside. If they searched the house, they'd find it in seconds. But then the other agent leaned in, his voice low and deliberate. "You need to understand. If you protect him, you go down with him." A wave of heat rushed to my face. "You think I want to protect him?" I shot back, my voice sharper than I intended. The taller one didn't flinch. "Then let us in." My hand hovered over the lock. Letting them in could mean freedom, or it could blow everything before I understood what was on that drive. I took a slow breath and made my choice, just as headlights swept across the front of my house, a car pulling up fast. The agents stiffened instantly, their hands hovering near their belts. The sudden burst of headlights flooded the living room, casting long, trembling shadows against the walls. I stepped back from the door just as the vehicle screeched to a halt in the driveway. It was my father's car. He was out before the engine fully stopped, his coat whipping in the cold wind, eyes locked on the porch like a hawk spotting prey. The man looked different, harder, sharper, and for the first time in my life, there wasn't even a trace of warmth in his gaze toward me. "What's going on here?" His voice was smooth, but tight, the way it got when he was trying to keep control. "Sir, we have a warrant," one of the agents began. "Not without my lawyer, you don't." My father cut in, his tone clipped. Then he turned to me, and his eyes narrowed just enough to send a chill straight down my spine. "Don't say a word." I'd seen that look before, when I was a kid and almost exposed one of his business deals at a family gathering. It wasn't a request. It was a threat. The agents didn't budge. "We can do this here, or we can bring you both in. Your choice." My father gave a cold smile. "Then I guess we're leaving." I stood there, caught between 2 forces. One that had shaped my entire life through manipulation and fear, and another that promised truth, but also destruction. As we stepped off the porch, one agent blocked my path, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "You know he'll burn you to save himself. Think about that before it's too late." I swallowed hard, my mind spinning. My father's hand gripped my shoulder like a vice as he guided me toward the car. And that's when I realized he wasn't taking me home. He was taking me away. The car doors slammed, and the sound felt final, like a cell locking shut. My father didn't start the engine right away. He just sat there, fingers drumming against the steering wheel, eyes scanning the rearview mirror. "You didn't say anything, did you?" he asked, his voice so low it was almost a growl. My throat tightened. "No." He smirked, but it wasn't relief, it was triumph. "Good. You remember who you owe everything to." As he finally pulled out of the driveway, the neighborhood fell away into darkness. We drove for miles in silence, the streetlights growing sparser until we hit an unmarked dirt road. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but his eyes flicked toward me, and I froze. "Leave it," he said. "They can trace it." That's when it hit me. He was running. And now, so was I, whether I wanted to or not. We reached an old cabin in the woods, the kind of place that didn't show up on GPS. He unlocked the door with a key that looked older than I was. Inside, it smelled of dust and oil, with boxes stacked against the walls. "Pack light. We might need to move again," he ordered, tossing me a small duffel bag. "And remember, if they catch me, they'll come for you next." The weight of his words pressed on my chest. He wasn't protecting me. He was tying me to him. As I shoved random clothes into the bag, I noticed one of the boxes had my name scrawled on the side. It was sealed with heavy duct tape, but a corner had come loose. I hesitated, glancing toward the kitchen where he was making a call. Then, with trembling fingers, I peeled it open, and what I saw inside made my stomach drop. Inside the box were documents, hundreds of them, stuffed into folders and envelopes. Some were old-school records, copies of my ID, even my birth certificate. But beneath them, I found something worse. Fake IDs with my picture, but different names. Bank statements for accounts I'd never opened. And at the very bottom, cash. Stacks of it, bundled with rubber bands, along with what looked like foreign currency. My hands shook as I flipped through them. Some of the bills had dates decades old, others were pristine and new. "Find something interesting?" His voice was right behind me. I nearly dropped the bundle of cash. I turned to see him leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed, a smirk tugging at his lips. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice cracking. "This," he said, stepping into the room, "is your insurance. If the world turns on you, you disappear. Just like me." "That's not insurance," I shot back. "That's evidence." He laughed, short, cold, humorless. "You think the FBI is after me? They're after anyone connected to me. You think you're safe just because you didn't know? You've been my cover for years. That's why you've never gone without." The truth hit like a sledgehammer. He hadn't been supporting me out of love. I'd been a pawn. Before I could respond, headlights flashed outside. A car door slammed. He grabbed the duffel bag and shoved it into my hands. "Move," he hissed. But when I glanced through the cracked curtain, I saw the unmistakable glint of a badge in the moonlight. The FBI had found us. The pounding on the door was so loud it rattled the picture frames on the wall. My father froze, just for a second, before shoving me toward the back hallway. "Go out the back. Now," he ordered, his voice low and sharp. "I'm not running for you," I snapped. My pulse was hammering, my legs ready to collapse, but something inside me had solidified. I was done being his shield. The knock came again, louder this time, followed by a commanding voice. "FBI, open the door." He grabbed my arm. "If you let them in, they'll take both of us," he snarled. His grip was iron, his eyes wild. I yanked my arm free. "If they take me, it's because of you." For a second, I thought he might hit me. But then the front door shook under the force of another hit, and he bolted toward the side window. I could hear the metal latch squeak as he tried to pry it open. The agents didn't wait for him to cooperate. The door burst inward, the sound of splintering would filling the room. 3 of them flooded in, guns drawn, voices booming, movements precise. Hands where we can see them. "Now." My father froze mid-step, the duffel bag dangling from one hand. His eyes darted to me, cold, calculating, before he dropped the bag and raised his hands. I stood rooted to the spot as they cuffed him, reading him his rights. His gaze never left mine. "You think you've won," he said quietly, just before they let him out. "But they'll come for you next." As the door closed behind them and the night swallowed their voices, I was left standing alone in the wreckage, heart pounding, body shaking, realizing my life would never be the same again.